Hello, folks. I'm Jonathan Kessler. I'm part of Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue. And I'm going to talk a little bit about parrots and particularly parrot enrichment. This was billed as parrots as pets. We're going to go a little bit beyond that. Let's see, I'm not seeing my slides yet, so that would be helpful if I hit the arrow key. There we go. All right. So enrichment is a term really for keeping little minds or big minds busy. And I'll talk about agency in a moment. First, let's give a little bit of an overview here about the presentation. As I said, I'm part of Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue. We are an virtual, nonprofit, all-volunteer organization dedicated to the rescue, foster, adoption of companion birds, particularly parrots, and also education. So, for example, first step in the foster adoption process before someone can even really put in an application is to go through a 3-hour class on basic bird care, because parrots are pretty complex beings and very, very different from mammalian pets and need a lot of care. Mickaboo is, by the way, active in the Bay Area, and if you're considering adopting a parrot or considering getting a parrot, first of all, we very much encourage you to adopt rather than buy from a breeder for all of the same great reasons that we make those recommendations for dogs and cats, and to get educated. Also, speaking of a lot of things that are being done in a group called Parrot Kindergarten, a lot of the enrichment and training stuff that I'm talking about is based on participation there. And they are really doing some wonderfully cutting edge stuff, exploring parrot intelligence and capabilities and providing really full lives for companion birds. About me, I've been with Mickaboo since 2015. I teach some of those basic bird classes and take care of 4 birds. We fostered our first bird for Mickaboo in January of 2015 and adopted him in February. We now have 4 birds. We still periodically foster, but 4 is about our limit. And yes, that is a picture of a parrot being read to. And we'll talk about that in a moment. I'll make a brief disclaimer. A lot of parrot people, African gray parrots are known as being especially intelligent. All parrots are really intelligent. Grays have the reputation for being the brainiest of the brainy. And so people will see some of this stuff and say, well, of course your birds are doing this great stuff. They're African grays. My pictures are heavy on African grays because 3 of our birds are grays, but there are all sorts of birds doing this work and this play. Everything from cockatoos to budgies and cockatiels and Amazons and even little parrotlets. So with that, let's move into the main part of this talk. So there are a couple of things to discuss right up front. Parrots are very diverse. They're a very diverse group of animals, and we'll talk about what that means in the next couple of slides. They also live a long time. The bigger parrot species can live 80 to 100 years with proper care, and even the smaller species can live 20 years. So they're a serious commitment. And I was just talking to one of the Brand Live volunteers. One of the things that brings a lot of parrots into rescue is that they outlive their caregivers. And that's a pretty common situation. So if you're thinking about a parrot as a pet, you're probably going to want to do some estate planning as well. Parrots are very social. They live in flocks. They are not loners, like, for example, cats. And unlike dogs, whose packs tend to have a hierarchy, parrot flocks are not hierarchical. Talk a little more about that as well. They're also incredibly intelligent, and that's going to be a topic that we spend a lot of time on. And lastly, they're prey animals. which is another important way that they're different from particularly dogs and cats. So diverse. There are more than 300 different species of parrots, not breeds, but species. So by contrast, there is one species of domestic dog and one species of domestic cats. The huge variation between a Chihuahua and a Mastiff or a Great Dane, that's still the same species. They're just different breeds. Whereas parrots are an order. So the grouping parrots is equivalent to the mammalian grouping of carnivores, which includes not only dogs and cats and wolves and lions and tigers, but bears and weasels. We're talking about that level of biological diversity. As I mentioned, the larger species can live 80 to 100 years or more. And even the small species, like little budgies, can live 20 years with proper care. So it's a real commitment. And one of the things I'll, put in, one of the things that really opened me up to Mickaboo is that every bird gets the same level of care. Whether it's a budgie that originally cost $10 in a pet store, or a macaw that might have a resale value of $3,000, they get the same level of care and vet care. And the vet bills for the organization are pretty remarkable, about $50,000 a month. So, and we subsist on donations. So, if you have it in your heart, keep Mickaboo in mind for your donations. Diverse and long-lived. They're also social and very intelligent. Yes, that is a parrot playing a game on a tablet. And we're going to talk about that toward the end of this presentation. But they need lots of safe toys, things that are safe for them to play with, lots of different types of toys, and lots of social interaction. In the wild, their social interaction would be with other members of a flock. But in captivity, you are kind of their flock. They're not wired to be solitary animals. So you are their artificial flock, and you have a big responsibility to keep them occupied and provide them with social interaction and stimulation. And as I mentioned before, parrot flocks are not hierarchical. There is no alpha parrot. And so relating with them is more a matter of negotiation and mutual benefit than I say you do this, so you do this. They are social learners like us. They learn from their parents and they learn from their peers in flock. And whereas dogs in particular have been bred to retain certain puppy characteristics throughout their lives, parrots are not domesticated, and over their long lives, they grow and change very much like we do. And we have to be prepared for the fact that their personalities evolve over time. Because they're intelligent, they need a lot of mental activity. I used to say with dogs, and now I say with parrots, idle beaks are the devil's playground. Idle snouts is the dog version. And training is a great thing both for your bird's well-being and happiness, as well as for your relationship with them. Last thing in this overview section is that parrots are prey animals, and in that way they are really different than particularly dogs and cats. They're much more like rabbits. They are hardwired to be very cautious and skeptical and afraid of new things. Dogs and cats see the world as, hey, can I play with that? Can I eat it? That's cool. Parrots see the world as, I've never seen that before. Is that going to kill me? And it's a very different way of being. And consequently, we as caregivers need to be respectful of that. Anything that we do that makes us seem like a predator, like moving fast, or coming in from up above, which is what aerial predators do, is likely to frighten a parrot and cause a breakdown of trust, or at least just cause a fear reaction, which we don't want. Similarly, mistreatment makes them afraid of us. We don't want that. Not quite as important for training, but very important for care and well-being, is that prey animals hide illness, and they're very good at it. And if you think about the old saying, predators prey on the weak and sick. So if you're in a flock or a herd, you don't want to look like the weak or sick one, right? You are going to keep up a strong front for as long as you can, because you don't want to be the one singled out to be eaten. And Mickaboo often gets called to take care of birds from the Telegraph Hill flock in San Francisco when they get sick. But when they get sick, they're literally so sick usually that they have fallen out of the tree. They no longer have the strength to perch, and they seem fine until boom, they're not. And in captivity, parrots are that way as well. Parrots are not naturally aggressive, so biting is a fear reaction that is generally a last resort unless we train them otherwise. By train them, I don't mean that you can train an attack parrot, but that if you ignore your parrot's body language and signs that, hey, you're pushing me too far here, and they have no opportunity to get away, either because they're, say, in a corner and their wings are clipped, they can't fly, then at that point they may bite. And you are likely to do things at that point that may reinforce biting as a behavior. For example, if I'm trying to get my bird to step up and it's backed into a corner and can't get any further and then bites me, chances are I'm going to do two things. I'm going to yank my hand away, and I'm going to go, ow, and make a loud noise. Well, interaction has taught the parrot three important things. First was that I was too stupid to see all of their cues, all of their body language saying, hey, I'm not ready for this. Please, let's not do this yet. I'm too stupid for that. Second is, what I do understand is that they bite me. And when they bite me, I do two things. One is I take my hand, which was in their space and bothering them, out. So that gives some relief. And second, I make a loud noise. And if you're a parrot, loud noises are cool. So, hey, this is like three-way win. And now I have just very efficiently taught my parrot to bite when I try to get it to step up. But they're not naturally aggressive. You don't see parrots in the wild biting other parrots or biting other animals. So because they're prey animals, anything that we do that makes them afraid depletes our trust bank. And I'll talk for a minute. I just want to bring up this idea of a trust bank. This is an idea from a wonderful trainer, Cassie Molina. I think I didn't mention by name, but I also do want to give a call out to Jen Kunha, who is the founder of Parrot Kindergarten, both really amazing trainers. And this is a model that I just find so helpful working with all animals, and that is that our relationship with them is like a bank. And things that we do that build trust, are deposits into that account and allow us to get further and further into a deeper relationship. Things that we do that frighten them are withdrawals from that trust account. Now, sometimes you have to make a withdrawal. We had to evacuate 2 years ago because of the CZU lightning strike fires. At that point, even if the bird didn't want to step up, I was going to have to get the bird to step up to get it into a carrier to evacuate. And for one of those birds, that was scary. That was a withdrawal from our trust fund, but we make a lot of deposits, so the relationship was able to sustain that. The picture here in the corner is one of my examples of building up enough trust. And parrots will teach you patience more than dogs and cats even. They take a long time to trust. This bird, Lou, was surrendered. He was pretty close to death. His owner had become homeless and had been living on the street for quite a while. He was starving and dehydrated. And his owner, who was a woman and had been homeless, had also been in some pretty abusive relationships. Lou came to us terrified of men. For the first 2 years that we had Lou, any training that I did, any reward I wanted to give him, I had to give him in a small bucket, because if I tried to give it to him by hand, he would bite my hand. But 2 years of training and rewards in buckets, and by somewhere around 2 years, he was willing to safely take treats from my hands. That was a huge step for him. And then just this year, so 5 years in, I was reading to him, and he decided to climb onto my lap. That was simply a demonstration of having made lots and lots and lots and lots of small deposits into the trust bank until the account was full enough that he felt safe to come up onto my lap. Okay, we've got some questions coming in, and I am going to answer some of them now. When a parrot's personality changes, is it similar to how a person ages, grumpier as they get older or calmer and more confident? It really, like people, depends on the bird, right? Some people do get calmer as they get older, and some get grumpier. Some get wiser, some get a little more scatterbrained. So, it really, really depends. The main thing is just not to imagine that they're going to stay static. Wow, we're getting lots of questions. This is great. I'm gonna jump around for a moment. Can you potty train a bird? You sort of can. Because birds are flighted, they have to stay really light. So they poop more often than dogs or cats. You can train a bird to poop in particular areas or places pretty well. And you can also tend to be aware, for example, if the bird is on you, you can tell by their body language when they're likely to poop and move them over something. But, you're not going to get them, for example, to wait 6 hours until it's time to go outside. This is great. I'm glad we're getting a lot of questions. What is the best way to introduce yourself to a parrot? Slowly, and to go at their pace. This is, and as I was saying with Lou, it really took 5 years for him to be willing to step up. That was a pretty severe case, a pretty abused bird. But a bird is likely to regard you as potentially threatening at first. And so moving slowly, respecting them. There are a lot of great videos available, for example, on YouTube, on parrot body language. Their body language is not fur, and they don't have lips or teeth. They don't smile like mammals do. Their body language is really clear, but it's really different than what we're used to. And a big part of it is moving toward something that they like or leaning towards something that they're interested in versus moving away from or leaning away from something that they're not interested in. So if you are approaching a parrot and the parrot is moving away, stop. Just stop, stand where you are, talk to them from there. After a little while, you may be able to move closer. And if you move closer and they stay where they are, you're in good shape. If you move closer and they back away, stay back. But move at their pace. Rushing them does not typically go well. What type of home environment is best for parrots living in a home? They need lots of room, so there's okay. They need the largest cage possible. There are a lot of important issues around their cage. So Mickaboo um, offers a basic bird care class that addresses a lot of these questions. And if you go to the Mickaboo website, mickaboo.org, you'll get there. And I often teach that class, and I'll go into more detail there. Primarily, again, parrots being very social, you want the parrot to be in a part of the home where you spend time and where they will interact with you. When I go into a home and parrots are in the little room down the hall at the end of the house that nobody ever goes to, they've been very unhappy birds, and not surprisingly, they scream a lot because they only get attention from someone yelling, "Shut up!" That's a terrible situation, right? They want to hang out with you. What's the appropriate sized habitat for a parrot? And should they be allowed to roam free? Cage size varies based on species, right? Obviously, a bigger bird needs a bigger cage. Smaller bird can get by with a smaller cage, and it's very specific. I can't say here I could say an African gray cage should be at least 2 by 3 and perhaps 5 feet tall. The bar spacing is important. There's lots of considerations. Whether a bird should be out, they should have time out of their cage, supervised time out of their cage, perhaps an hour a day, more possibly. Beyond that, it depends on the temperament of the bird. Some birds like to climb down and go wandering. And houses are generally not that safe, right? There are extension cords that can get chewed on, etc. So if you have a bird who likes to go roaming, that's a bird who's going to need a lot of supervision. If you have dogs or cats, then you are not going to want your birds to go roaming free unless the dogs and cats are safely enclosed in a different part of the house. One of our 4 birds is outside most of the day because he does not climb down to the ground. He's really happy to just hang out on his cage or on a couple of perches that are nearby. 3 of the others, actually all 3 of the others, will climb down and go exploring. They are only out when they're supervised. What is a good low maintenance or easy temperament bird to adopt? This is kind of a trick question because when you get to parrots, none of them are low maintenance. The easiest parrots to keep are probably budgies or cockatiels. They're also tend to be quietest, budgies in particular. They still need a lot of social interaction. They still have tremendously active brains and need socialization and training and skills. But if you are interested in a relatively easy parrot, budgies are a really good way to go. Beyond that, they're not particularly easy. Finches and pigeons are easy and relatively low maintenance birds. Is clipping wings painful for the birds? And should you clip them for the bird's safety? There's a lot of discussion, I'll say. I could say controversy about clipping wings. Not as much as there has been about docking ears, for example, where there isn't really much to say on the docking ears side, other than tradition. So a bird with clipped wings can't fly as well, and therefore seems to be at less risk from flying away if they get out. On the other hand, if you clip their wings too hard and they can't fly at all and just drop like a stone, they're likely to hurt themselves. And 2 is that there's likely to be some point in the period of their wings growing back where they can fly much better than you think they can. And so you have a false sense of security that your bird can't fly and they actually fly off. That's problematic. Um, there's a lot, it's something that I don't give a yes or no answer on. I encourage people to educate themselves. There's pros and cons on both sides. The biggest two things on the pro side of keeping them flighted is that, first of all, flying is their primary form of exercise. And so a bird that can fly is likely to be a healthier bird. And second, it's their get out of jail card. If they're afraid, if something is scary, they can fly away from it. And if they can't, then they're backed into a corner and it's a much more fearful situation. So for some birds, being able to fly is psychologically very important. Does Mickaboo have fosters? Yes, Mickaboo does have fosters. And the foster program, what does it look like? It starts out the same as the adoption program. That is, every potential foster has to take the basic bird class, fill out an application, and then go through both a telephone screening and a home screen, a home visit. The home visit, imagine like for dogs or cats, going to make sure that there really is a fenced yard. It's to make sure that the environment is safe, that we're not talking about, oh, we'll put the bird cage next to the fireplace, which would be a really bad thing. Or, oh, yeah, well, we think it'll be fine to have the ceiling fans going with the birds out. No, not so much. But it's also not, the idea is to use that to work with people to really understand the care that the bird's going to need and how to provide the best care. At that point, there are birds coming in, through rescue all the time. And so if not every week, certainly several times a month, there'll be requests on the Mickaboo email alias. Hey, we need fosters for, 5 budgies just came in. We need to get them fostered. An Amazon is coming in. We need a foster for the Amazon. And through the bird class and other learning, you learn about what species you might be interested in and what you think you're capable of doing. Work with the foster coordinator. At that point, for a foster, Mickaboo provides a cage and will handle essential medical care. And the foster parent is responsible for food and toys and, care and socialization. Whereas adoption, obviously, then the person has to provide their own cage and their own medical care. Fosters. Standard grooming that parrots preen themselves. Depending on the bird and on the cage setup, you may need to do nail trims periodically, or you may not. But that's pretty much the closest to standard grooming. However, they should have regular well bird checkups once a year with blood work. And parrots really do need to see avian vets. They're very different than mammals, and most general practitioner vets don't see enough birds to be good at it. We are really fortunate in the Bay Area to have several world-class avian vets, including For the Birds in Cupertino, Bay Area Bird Hospital in San Francisco, Wildwood in East Bay, a number of them. And, vet care for parrots isn't cheap. A annual well bird visit for a medium-sized parrot like an African gray, medium-large, is about $400. Do parrots always learn and repeat what they constantly hear? Do you? No, but if you hear something that's particularly funny, you might tell that joke to some friends. So there are certain things that grab their interest and that they want to learn and say or do. Not all parrots talk. Not all parrots who are of a species that are known for talking talk. So I often do classes for schools or summer camps with parrots. We have three African greys. They're very shy birds who are known to be very shy and very good talkers. Molly does not talk, and she's not shy, so she's a great bird to do these classes with. She goes into a group and goes, "Oh, people, that's kind of interesting." Whereas our other greys, like Lou, who's shown here, would be like, "Oh my God, there are people, get me out of here." But she also doesn't talk. Uh, I'm going to wrap on questions in a minute so I can talk more about training, and then I'll get back to questions in a few more minutes. Let's see. I do want to talk about okay, two great things. I've seen parrots that have escaped and are around town. That's an ideal time to contact Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue. Again, mickaboo.org. You can also contact your local shelter. The shelter will probably contact Mickaboo. We have working relationships with pretty much all the shelters in the Bay Area. And the other question I'm going to answer before going on is, if you have other animals in the home, can a parrot be introduced? And if so, how? The answer is yes. And the how is slowly and respectfully, right? You don't want your parrot going face to face with your dog or cat. Not really, not ever, but certainly not for a long time. And, in our house, the cat has learned, right, that while he can be around the parrots, he can't approach them and he can't stare at them in a way that is typically associated with, "I'm feeling predatory," right? Then we will redirect him for doing that. And it works the other way too. We have an adopted Anatolian Shepherd. He's a very large dog. One of our parrots thought that he was very, very scary for a long time and would alarm call whenever the dog walked into the room. And it took a while. We kept the dog from getting very close to that cage for a while, and it took a matter of a few weeks for the bird to accept that, okay, this large, scary dog really isn't so scary, and I can be okay with that. All right. What I'd really planned to talk about was enrichment and training and learning. And I'm going to go over a couple of basic training terminology things and then go into a little bit more detail about them. I'm going to talk about positive reinforcement training, which is rewards-based rather than punishment. Have to mention clicker training because a lot of people are familiar with it, and that is just a specific type or technique in positive reinforcement-based training. Rewards and motivation, which are a very important part of positive reinforcement training. And an important question that I would encourage you to ask with any animal that you work with is, are they doing this because they have to, or are they doing this because they want to? And while we all do some things that we have to do and may not want to, it's generally a lot nicer for us and for them when we're doing things because we want to do them. And so getting the motivations right is really important. Talk a little bit, very briefly, about behavioral analysis and the idea of ABCs, antecedent, behavior, and consequence. All of this is going to be at an overview level, right? Obviously, in 45 minutes, we're not going to get into detail here. Then we'll talk about target training, and then discrimination training, preference training, and teaching yes and no. And all of these can be applied to other types of animals. We apply it to parrots. If we have time, we'll talk about playing with tablets and technology and reading. I don't think we'll get there. And all of this for birds in general is partly about building agency. And by agency, I mean the ability to choose what action one takes or what happens. And it's the sense that we have some control in our lives. And if you think about two jobs where you're doing identical things, but in one you are given an outcome and told, hey, however you want to get this done, go for it. Do it the best way possible. And the other, you're being micromanaged and told, do this, now do this, now do this, now do this, now do this. right? That second one is one in which you don't have much agency, and it's likely to be a lot less fun. Having the ability to impact what happens in our own lives is huge. Okay. It's very easy when looking at a behavior to label it and put labels on the behavior and imagine a motivation. So my parrot bit me because he was angry that I'd been playing with my other parrot. ABCs, and I encourage you to look at this in more detail elsewhere because it's a really life-changing concept, is breaking down the behavior into the antecedent, what happened right before or a little bit before, what was the actual behavior, and C, what is the consequence? What happened because of right after the behavior? And the more you can be objective with this and use descriptive language rather than labeling. So he was angry is a label. And it's also a supposition because I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what's going on in Nick's head. Nick's another human being. I certainly don't know what's going on in the head of another species. But the observation is after playing with my other bird, okay, we will include that. It might be important. I walked over to Fred's cage and he was perched in the back of his cage. And I put my hand in his cage and approached him and asked him to step up. Now he's in the back of his cage. My hand comes up and he bit me. And I yelped and pulled my hand out of Fred's cage. Well, there's a lot more information there than Fred bit me because he was angry that I'd been playing with my other bird. And I can look at that, see what other situations Fred has bitten me in, what else is happening, and I can draw conclusions from there. Very, very useful. Positive reinforcement. Positive means to get something. It doesn't mean good. Negative means take something away. It doesn't mean bad. So positive reinforcement is you do something to get something you want. And whether that's working hard so that your boss says, good job, I'm going to give you a raise, or, your dog walking in heel position because you're giving him a treat or you're giving him lots of attention and pets and scritches, that's positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is when you do something to stop or avoid something you don't want. So, for example, the old behavioral situations where an animal would be on an electrocuted floor and they had to push a button to turn off the electricity. That's a terrible way to learn. And punishment is either having something you don't want done to you or having something you do want being taken away. And you can see from the two pictures, right? The dog who's being threatened with a newspaper is cowering, is not in a really great situation to learn. And he's mostly worried not about learning something new, but about avoiding this unpleasant thing. Positive reinforcement is just much, much, much more effective. I'm not even going to talk about clicker training because we really don't have time. I'll talk just momentarily about target training. It's a great way to start positive reinforcement, and it's just teaching the animal to touch a target, for example, the end of a stick, and then you can move that. And that can be really useful for teaching the animal to go to different places, for birds to go in their cage, for example, or for touching other specific things. So this is the basis for a lot of tricks, like for a parrot, picking up a basketball and putting it in the basketball hoop, a tiny basketball, of course. Target training is a great place to start. With parrots, we can get into discrimination and preference training. And this is really what I wanted to talk about in terms of enrichment. So discrimination training is which is which, right? This is a this is a that. And you can do that with colors. Colors are a really easy thing to start with. This is red, this is blue. Now, once you've learned to touch something with a target, we've primed them to touch other things. This is red, touch red, touch red, touch red. You repeat that a few times until touch red is pretty clear. This is blue, touch blue, touch blue, touch blue. This is red, this is blue. Then you get to, which is red? Touch red. If they touch red, then they probably got it. If they touch blue when you say touch red, they likely don't have it, and you have to go back to touch red, touch blue. We're not looking for 100% accuracy here. 75% accuracy is fine. Parrots, like other very intelligent animals, can get burned out on too much repetition. And you want to keep their minds active. So we get to where they can discriminate between different colors or different shapes, which is the triangle, which is the square, which is big, which is little. Teaching them vocabulary. And this can just get really, really neat. We're doing dinosaurs right now with our birds. Which one is Triceratops? Which one is Diplodocus? And they're having a great time with that. And we can also get to matching. Red and red are the same. That's a match. Red and blue are different. That's not a match. Triceratops and Triceratops are a match. Triceratops and Diplodocus are not a match. Hey, guess what? You've just taught your bird to be able to play Go Fish with you, and you can play cards with your bird. Now that we've gotten used to, here are these two different things I'm presenting you, it's very easy to move to preference training. Which is favorite? Here are two toys. Which one would you like? This one? Yes, no. That one? Yes, no. Or just, which one would you like? The parrot will probably point to or go to touch one, or might not do either. And then I might say, do you want this one? No. Do you want this one? No. Okay, you don't want either of them. But this level of preference training starts again to give them some agency and choice in their lives. And that leads to something that to me is really mind-blowing and life-changing, which is teaching yes and no. So we're really talking about a two-step association when we talk about yes and no, because we have a symbol, we have a sound yes and a sound no, and we have a visual symbol for that as well. And that visual symbol might be a color. For example, we started with red pipe cleaners twisted into a circle for no, and green pipe cleaners for yes. Green and red are really easy for us humans to remember, so that's what I use. And you can see in this picture, although it's small, Molly is pointing to a green yes. I'm holding up a green yes and a red no. And she is answering yes to a question. So when I say two-level association, first we associate the symbol with the sound. So this symbol is yes. This is yes. I don't care about the meaning yet. And again, this is coming from Jennifer Kunha and Parrot Kindergarten. I don't care about the meaning yet. This is yes, touch yes. This is yes, touch yes. This is no, touch no. This is no, touch no. Which is no, which is yes. When they've got 70-75% accuracy with that they can distinguish the symbol for yes from the symbol for no, then we start to associate meaning. And the easiest way to do that is, do you want something? So we start for yes with something we know they want. So for our African greys, for example, an almond. Do you want an almond? I know the answer to that is probably yes. Do you want an almond? Yes. Do you want an almond? Yes. Do you want an almond? Yes. Okay. And of course they get the almond. For no, we want something they don't want. But we really don't want to make this traumatic or scary at all. So we don't want it to be something they really don't want. You know, do you want a hawk to come visit you? That's like, no. We want it to be what we call a neutral no, something that they don't want because they just really don't care about it. So a glass of water, for example, is a great thing because if your bird's been in or at their cage, they've had water available all day. They're probably not particularly thirsty right now. Do you want water? No. Do you want water? No. Do you want water? No. Okay. Now, do you want an almond? Select yes or no. They're likely to select yes because they have understood that yes is what they select for an almond. Do you want water? No. Okay. We refresh that. At this point, they're starting to get an idea of yes and no in that area of want. And I will wrap this section up with a funny story. I was mentioning Molly, the one bird who loves to be read to and do shows. I was probably in the second or third day of teaching yes and no. And Molly likes seeds. She likes apples. She's not really crazy about pistachios, and she loves blueberries. And my go-to for yes, because they're small and easy, was sunflower seeds. Do you want a sunflower seed? Yes. Do you want a sunflower seed? Yes. Do you want a piece of wood? No. Do you want a sunflower seed? Yes. Do you want a piece of apple? Yes. Do you want a plastic toy? No. Do you want a blueberry? Yes. Now, it just so happened I only had one blueberry. And then I said, do you want a seed? No. Do you want a seed? No. Huh. How about apple? Do you want apple? No. Maybe she's confused. Do you want a piece of wood? No. A couple of other no's. She was very clear about no. But she was using no for things that I thought she would want to say yes for. And then the light bulb went off because we're usually the slowest kids on the bus when we're working with our animals. And I went to the refrigerator and got another blueberry. Do you want a blueberry? Yes. Okay, she had just decided, I'm saving my yes. I want the high value treat. I'm done with these other things. I don't want a seed. I want a blueberry. So I was pretty sure that she had gotten it at that point. I'm going to move back to questions now. I will just briefly touch on that there are a number of parrots, including ours, who are really enjoying being read to, like small children, and identifying, touching different things in books, and who are starting to use COM-boards as programs on tablets, and also drawing programs, music programs, and other kids' programs. And these are very enriching, really fun. And with the COM-board, it's an opportunity for them to, again, express preferences about what they want. So I'm going to move back to questions now. We talked about veterinary care. We talked about parrots who've escaped. What types of treats are favorites of parrots? Again, the answer is it depends. And when kids say, what do parrots eat? Well, what do you eat? And is what you eat the same as what your neighbor eats? Probably not. Parrots tend to like nuts and seeds, but nuts and seeds are both pretty high fat, and so they are high value training treats that we don't give as a primary part of their meal. We used to think 30, 40 years ago that parrots should get seeds as their diet, but it's actually not what their diet should be. A seed diet for a parrot is sort of like an M&M's diet for me. I would enjoy eating M&Ms all the time, perhaps, but not really good for me. Seeds and nuts are a favorite treat. There are a lot of parrots who love pine nuts. Our birds don't. And fruit, depending. Again, for Molly, blueberries over apples, but apples over seeds. And that may change on a particular day. Fruits are very high in sugar, so again, something that we use for training and not a primary part of their diet. I want to come back to the veterinary care question. Do they need checkups or have common illnesses as they get older? They do need regular checkups, and they can develop age-related issues, especially heart issues, but strongly encourage annual checkups because, again, they hide illness. So by the time they look sick, they're very sick. And a big part of good parrot care is being very observant to subtle signs of potential illness. including monitoring their feces to make sure that they're not showing any signs of illness there, and monitoring their general demeanor. Someone else asked, can you tell us about your favorite breed of parrot? And that's a great question, in part because not all of you were here for the beginning. Whereas dogs, there's one species of domestic dog with lots of breeds. There's over 300 species of parrots. Parrots are as different from one another as the order of, say, carnivores or primates. They are as different from each other as, say, a rhesus monkey is from a gorilla. So there are many different species of parrots. We love African greys. African greys are really smart. They're kind of shy. They're a little introverted. That's kind of like me. But much as boxers are my favorite breed of dog for someone else to have because they're so high energy, but they're so wonderful, right? Cockatoos are wonderful. They're smart, they're funny, they're super extroverted, and they're very loud. Every species, now I won't say every species of parrot, there are a couple of species of parrot who really just don't do well as companion birds. Not that many. But most of the species that are typically found as companion birds have particular characteristics. Some are more serious, some are funnier, some, kikes. God, kikes are just so funny. Poicephalus too. The parrot in the two middle pictures here is a Senegal parrot, different type of African parrot, much smaller than an African gray, obviously very different colored, completely different family, and they're just funny little birds. So yes, I love many types of parrots, but we have a very special place in our hearts for African greys. I think we've covered all of the questions so far. And it looks like we have a couple of more minutes. So I will talk a little bit more about reading and about technology, because I think it's really fascinating. By the way, here you can see a book about dinosaurs and a tiny bird. That's a parrotlet. You can see a small woman's hand in the picture to give you a sense of scale. And of course, that's a small board book for the size of this bird. And he's very actively touching one of the dinosaurs. We found that our parrots really love to be read to. Two of them love to be read to. Two of them are okay with it, but prefer other things. Not surprising, just like people. And love to identify different things in the books. And often these are opportunities to go and learn kind of kindergarten level unit studies. What I found really interesting from studying and teaching yes and no is that just like when I was a child, and just like my children had favorite stories, they have favorite stories and will pick certain books, regularly, cycle through certain books, or sometimes want to hear the same book for a couple nights in a row. And I was curious with Molly. I'm going to go back to this picture. This picture was taken at a summer camp where we were doing a presentation, and I wanted to try something new because Molly is pretty kickback and would let me do it. I was wondering if she would let someone else read to her besides me, and she did. So that is a young woman from the camp reading a book. The book's called My Big Dog. It's a wonderful book. Was one of my kids' favorite books, one of Molly's favorite books. And the other thing I wanted to try was in a public setting. I started asking Molly questions about the plot of the book, because we've read this book now probably a couple dozen times. And so I thought, well, Is this simply a collection of pictures that she uses to identify things in the pictures, or is there a story that's making sense here? And I was really surprised to hear, or to see, that she could answer questions about things that were going to happen in the plot in the book correctly. You know, the cat runs away. Does the cat come back home? Yes. Can a cat and dog be friends? Does the cat think that she can be friends with a dog? No. Can a cat and dog be friends? Yes. One, she knows she has cats and dogs in her house who are friends, but this story concludes with the cat and dog being friends. Um, the power of yes and no is amazing. And again, the capability of our animals, and particularly parrots, to absorb information and to learn is really, really profound. Resources, again, Mickaboo Companion Bird Rescue. If you're considering adopting or fostering parrots or volunteering, we are always in need of people to volunteer and people to foster. There are always great birds needing a forever home. And for some of the training stuff that I've been talking about, um, the parrot specific stuff, not necessarily the ABCs or an intro to positive reinforcement, Parrot Kindergarten, parrotkindergarten.com. I'm not seeing any more questions here, so I think that we're going to wrap things up.